So, Fatal Frame 2 just recently got what I honestly think is one of the best remakes around. It kept incredibly true to the original game, while updating the gameplay and also adding a few new features, such as side stories and new areas, that the devs originally wanted to include back in the day, but for whatever reason, were unable to. That being said, the remake doesn't answer every single question you may have about the storyline, and in fact presents a few new interesting mysteries of its own. So this week, let's take a look at a few of them and see if we can't figure out what's really going on. Naturally, this video will be full of spoilers for everything. 1. Who are the Hanging Twins? I think this is, to this day, one of the biggest and still lingering mysteries from Fatal Frame 2. Right at the start of the game, as you enter the Osaka house, we're treated to a cutscene of Mayu having the worst trip ever and forcing her sister to share in it. This is kind of our introduction to the horror we're about to see in the game, and while it largely focuses on Miyako and Masumi, there are also a few very brief flashes of a pair of twins who are hanging in a hallway. Who are they? Why are they there? What happened to them? First, let's take a closer look at them. Considering that much of Mayu's vision is focused on the Osaka house, being that it's the very location they've just entered, you would think these twins would be there too, right? But no. These twins are actually in the Kurosawa house. In fact, they're in the opening hall, the area where you first enter the house in Chapter 3. Next, they're kimonos. By the time we get to Chapter 6, we see these exact kimonos again. They are what the Kiryu twins are wearing. Or perhaps more specifically, Kiryu, Akane, and the twin doll her father made for her. That whole chapter is basically a side story exploring what happened to Akane, one of the youngest twins to ever take part in the Crimson Sacrifice ritual, and the doll her father created after, because he was upset at seeing her so sad. As we find out, the doll becomes possessed, Akane's father tries to figure out how to send it back to hell, but in the end, Akane, not wanting to lose the doll she views as her sister, ends up killing her father first to stop that from happening. So, we have a pair of twins who look exactly like Kiryu, Akane and her twin doll, hanging in the entrance of the Kurosawa house. And for some reason, Mayu sees this when she enters the Osaka house. What is going on here? What is the game trying to tell us? Is this scene just reusing assets? Is it simply trying to set the mood, if you will? Now, the game obviously doesn't answer this question definitively, but I do think it provides enough hints that we can pretty much guess what happened here. Throughout Chapter 6, as we learn about the doll, we discover that the only way to send it back to hell is a two-step process. First, the doll must be hung, which will kill its physical body. Then, the doll must be taken down to the abyss and tossed back in. Akane's father determines to do this, even if it means breaking the village's taboo and seeing the abyss with his own two eyes. Whatever it takes to save his daughter. However, the twin doll cottons onto this, and it makes Akane hide various pieces of the doll mechanism required to access the underground passage that will lead to the abyss. Then, it makes Akane kill her own father to ensure he can't carry out his plan to destroy the doll. Now, this is basically all the game tells us regarding this particular plotline. But we fight Akane's ghost in the Kiryu house, despite never learning of her death, and she's clearly still the same age. Plus, the doll pieces are still hidden, and the twin doll is also still there. So what happened? If we put all the pieces together, then it seems very possible that once the villagers learnt of Akane's father's death, they no doubt read his notes and also put two and two together. That twin doll was possessed, made Akane kill her father, and it had to go. And so, because of the great crime that Akane had committed by killing her own father, she and the doll were hung in punishment. With the Kurosawa family being the head honchos in the village, overseeing everything to do with the abyss, it really shouldn't be a surprise that they'd carry this out in their own house either. But then, why didn't they toss the doll into the abyss? Well, keep in mind what Akane's own father said. Going down there is a massive taboo. He was willing to break it because it was for the sake of his only daughter. But it stands to reason that nobody else was willing to break that taboo for something they weren't even sure was actually necessary. Once Akane and the twin doll were dead, that was the end of the Kiryu line. It was done. In his extended notes, available in one of the old Fatal Frame 2 guidebooks, the folklorist Makabe Seijiro then tells us that after the Kiryu family died out, another branch of the Kurosawa family was then sent to live in the house to take on the Kiryu name so that this important household could continue. So, if we assume this is how Akane ended up dying, why does Mayu see it when she enters the Osaka house? Well, she also sees a vision of Sae laughing and the slaughter that took place in the Kurosawa household, so her vision wasn't strictly relegated to what happened in the Osaka house, but rather glimpses of the overall horror that had happened in Minakami over the years, with all of it being traced back to the hellish abyss down below. There's no doubt the visual of these twins was first and foremost intended to create a certain atmosphere at the beginning of the game, yes. But it also seems likely that it also explains what happened with the downfall of the Kiryu family as well. It's not just random imagery that they pulled out of their backsides for giggles. What do you guys think? 2. Who is the Broken Neck Woman? In a game full of memorable characters, she's perhaps one of the most popular. In fact, a poll Japanese gamers took part in to determine the Fatal Frame series' most terrifying ghosts had her come in at a healthy number 7 overall. The Broken Neck Woman. We first come across her at the Heavenly Bridge following Mayu across, which is followed shortly thereafter by a battle with her on that exact same bridge. She also pops up towards the end when looking for the Tsuchihara crest, but who exactly is she? What's her story? The spirit list tells us that she died by throwing herself from the Heavenly Bridge to escape the Repentance. So we know that at the very least, she was living in the village during the time of Sae's ritual, and was one of the many villagers who died because it failed. The guidebook that came with the collector's edition of the remake also tells us that the impact of the fall left her neck bent at a terrible angle, and she currently has no idea what's going on. Even in death, she's in so much pain that she's still wandering the village looking for help. Her spirit stone is also little more than her crying about how much pain she's in as well. And that's it. The game doesn't give us anything more than that. Yet, she's not just some random set-piece ghost we encounter at the bridge where she died, and that's it. Interestingly, we also encounter her towards the end when looking for the Tsuchihara family crest, of all things, and she must first be defeated to obtain it. Even in the remake, where you have to first punt the children around to get the crest, before that, you'll find the Broken Neck Woman guarding the door that gives you access to them. In the original games, you encounter her in the graveyard by a Tsuchihara grave, and in the remake, she's in a newly created area right next to the dilapidated Tsuchihara house. Either way, this ghost we first encounter near the twin houses appears to actually be affiliated with the Tsuchihara family. Is she one of them? Who even are the Tsuchiharas? They're the one family in the game we don't really learn a lot about. The deluxe edition of Fatal Frame 5 finally revealed that the Fallen Woman, who died in a similarly horrifying manner, is actually a member of the Tsuchihara family, but she's the only person ever named. And even that was just recently in supplementary material from an entirely unrelated game. The Fatal Frame fanbook from back in the day reveals concept art of the rundown Tsuchihara house, and reveals they were responsible for overseeing numerous locations related to the Crimson Sacrifice ritual, such as Misono Hill right next door. And they also run the neighbouring storehouse, where they keep criminals. They were basically the muscle of the village, if you will. Another guidebook for the original game also has Makabe confirming that same information. He reveals he tried to look into the storehouse, but a man stopped him. Now, judging by the state of the Tsuchihara house, it would appear that by the time of Sae's ritual, the family has pretty much died out. At least, the main branch. We know the same thing happened to the Kiryu family when Akane killed her father. And then, another branch of the Kurosawas were installed to keep their name going. Is it possible that the fallen woman, the broken neck woman, and perhaps even this man that Makabe runs into at the storehouse are all that's left of this old family? However, we're also told that the veiled priests represent each of the important families in the village, and in particular, the 4 senior priests from each of these families watch over one of the pinwheel crests required to open the passage leading out of Minakami village from Kureha Shrine. Those 4 families being the Osaka, Tachibana, Kiryu, and Tsuchihara. We see these 4 priests also taking part in the cutting ritual with Kurosawa Ryokan, the ceremony master, suggesting that the Tsuchihara family is in fact still around, even if it's just this guy and the 2 women who died unfortunate deaths after jumping from great heights. Maybe it runs in the family. Is the broken neck woman a member of the Tsuchihara family? It seems likely. But this and the overall fate of the family itself is never fully explained, even in the remake. What do you guys think of this one? And that is 2 of the still lingering mysteries from Fatal Frame 2. I will definitely be making some more of these videos, so if there are other mysteries that you'd like me to take a look at, let me know in the comments below. But until then, let me know what you thought about these ones, and I'll see you again next time.